The next speaker, I'd like to welcome up onto stage is Koning, director of the Koch Institute, because as you will imagine, pulling off cracking cancer at MIT is impossible without the Koch Institute. So I'd like her to get a microphone, please, and share with us just a couple of seconds observations about how how you see this event, how you got engaged, and what's your thoughts of the day.
Hello. Oh yes, this is on. Hi, I'm Anna de Koning. I am the executive director, not the director. That's my boss, Tyler Jacks. Don't tell him you confused him with me. I've been at MIT for 15 years, and these past few years have definitely been amongst the most exciting years I could have imagined in cancer research. So it's really exciting to be here today. I think many of you might already know the story of the Koch Institute, but bear with me for 2 minutes. I will use my 2 minutes in part for that. Back in early 70s, President Nixon declared the war on cancer, and he launched a request for applications from universities to start National Cancer Institute designated units. And MIT threw its hat into the ring and became one of 7 basic National Cancer Institute designated centers in America. We don't have patients in a clinic, as you know, but we have a whole lot of MIT-ness in us, including lots of entrepreneurs. For 30 years, about 12 faculty members from the Department of Biology roamed the hallways, 5 of them Nobel Prize winners, so not too shabby of a history. Of course, none of you were born yet. I was, but I wasn't aware of things. And then about 2000, Tyler Jacks became director. Then Susan Hockfield became president at MIT, and he convinced her his building needed some updates, betterment, and she said, why don't I give you a new building, and why don't I double it in size, and we will add an equal number of engineers and try a whole very MIT approach to cracking cancer or tackling cancer, whatever you want to call it. And so there we are. The Koch Institute was founded about 10 years ago. Half of our faculty, biologists, half of them from the various engineering departments at MIT, all together under one roof, fighting this joint mission of cancer. And so then the question became, well, how are we going to make this work? How do we make sure these people talk to each other? How do we become more than the sum of our parts? And then once we think we have become more than the sum of our parts, how do we measure that? How do we measure impact? Of course, we can look at our trainees and we see them starting companies and presenting at events like this today, which of course is a wonderful way to say we're doing well. They go start labs, they become directors of other NCI-designated cancer centers. Again, we're doing well. Publications. We can count publications. MIT did a study, we didn't even know they were doing it. They looked at all the departments, lab and centers at MIT to see which was the most collaborative, which ones had the most multi-faculty publications, and the Koch Institute was number 1. Not exactly surprised, but still pretty pleased with that result. And then for me, my favorite sort of way to measure impact is related to today, and that is the startups that have come out of the Koch Institute. We're a very small center, really, compared to the one across the street, the Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center, with 1,100 members. We have about 50 right now. We've been growing over the years. Of those 50 faculty, in the past 10 years, together they have launched more than 60 companies. And that is a really impressive number, and over a dozen of those are in the clinic now, really cracking cancer, I think. And so today it's really exciting to see that at least half of the companies are being run by dear old friend trainees that are doing well, that are changing the world, that are making a difference for patients. And so I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited to hear from everyone this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy your morning. Thank you.
I'll remind ourselves why we are in this room, because Anne said the history of the Koch Institute isn't very long, but some of you will know the history of the Startup Exchange is also not very long, which is actually quite surprising, right? Because you would think that, hand and mind together and MIT and startups would go very well together, and in fact they do, and there's an enormous amount of activity. In fact, obviously crossing domains. Today I think we'll be straddling many of these topics on this chart. which wasn't really designed just for a cracking cancer concept. It more represents all the kinds of topics that people come to us from all the member companies, some of whom are represented in the audience today. But anyway, it is interesting to observe that we have only been going with Startup Exchange for 3 years. So that preceding that was 75 years of the Industrial Liaison Program. Now, what does that mean? It means that something is changing clearly in the way that industry and academia is approaching startup innovation. So we are clearly much closer. One of the things when I was brought in to think about how to build this out that really surprised me was that we actually didn't have kind of at the macro level at MIT a structure to really put in place collaboration between startups and large companies. There were many, many smaller programs that had mentoring or teaching or even giving faculty grants as their main mandate, but there were very few that had this partnership and crossing boundaries as mandate. So that's really what we ended up focusing on. And I think as you will see throughout this morning, well, if we don't succeed when only the right players are in the room, when will we succeed? So, I mean, I really don't think there are a lot of people in this room that don't belong to any of the main target categories for partnership. And I want to point out that we don't put on this event just for you to have fun and drink coffee. This is serious work. The breaks are serious work. People laugh at this, but we're here to make a big difference in cracking cancer and in bringing startups and corporations and university closer together. We did over 600 introductions last year, but I don't want you to focus on that number. Our target for next year is that the success rate of those introductions is going to increase. We're now targeting, and I'm not going to go out with the number, but it's a very high number for these basic introductions. So if you are a corporation and you meet with a startup, and we both have agreed, or the three of us have agreed, the startup, the industry partner, and us have agreed this is a good meeting, there will be an outcome. That is my expectation. Now, when this works, we see things like Witricity in a different field, electric charging of vehicles, partnering with IHI, a very big Japanese conglomerate. Wonderful things can happen. We also have an accelerator program that's not so much represented here today, but where we pick out of the 1,500 startups we work with, we pick the top 25 at any given moment, and we have a rolling entry several times a year to keep it fresh. And it's very exciting. We actually have our first sort of pre-launch symposium meeting this afternoon. The new 6 new startups haven't even been announced yet, but we're continuously refreshing this portfolio, and these are very, very exciting companies indeed.